We still have people joining, so we'll wait a few more seconds to allow for everyone to join us. And we still have people joining, so I want to make sure that we allow time for everyone to get in, so we'll just wait a couple more seconds. So as we're allowing for the last few to join us before we start, I'll go ahead and start with introductions. Again, good evening. My name is Holly McClure, the superintendent of the Del Mar Union School District. Welcome to this parent webinar. The first of two that we're having this week. We'll have another one on Thursday. And with us here tonight also is Shelley Peterson, our Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Services, Jason Romero, our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Jenny Ha, our Director of Student Services, and Chris Delahanty, our Executive Director of Capital Programs and Facilities. So thank you to all of you for being here this evening. And thank you also for submitting your questions prior to this webinar. We will record this presentation, so for those parents who are unable to attend live with us this evening, we will record it and we will post it as well. So we have been planning all summer to bring our students back to school and working very hard on those plans. It is our highest priority, is reopening our schools. And we know the value of school. We know the value of what a child's life at school brings to him or her. And we understand how important school is to, each child's well-being. So it is our top priority to be able to reopen our schools and to bring our students and our staff back safely and to minimize risk for everyone. So we do this by using data through our Health and Human Services Agency and guidance from the California Department of Public Health. Also in constant, frequent contact with physicians to help guide our decision-making regarding the reopening of our schools. So we know there are many questions from all of our parents. Our goal tonight is to be able to answer those questions. We got a lot of them. So hopefully the things that you were asking about will be addressed in what we present tonight and we're able to share with you this evening. We know that you need to know answers so that you can get an idea for what the different options are, and we do want to give options for our parents and for your families, and so that you can start thinking specifically about your children's experience during the next school year. So we're focused on bringing our kids back to school, and how do we do that safely? When we're focused on how to bring them back to school, we're not focused on how to keep our children out of school. So we asked you a question, and those actual responses from parents fell into some broad categories. We've read every question. We actually received exactly, the last time I looked earlier today or early this evening, 780 responses, and many of those had multiple questions attached to them. So that's very helpful for us as we actually thought about this evening's presentation, as well as addressing your questions so that you can prepare for the upcoming school year. So they did fall into these categories. These are the main themes that we saw come out. So what are the school protocols that we can expect in order to reduce exposure? A lot of questions from parents about cleaning and disinfecting. Many questions about physical distancing and face coverings. Outdoor learning, there's been a lot of talk about where students learn and outdoor learning and those options. Many questions about what if related to COVID, and that's specific to the mitigation protocols. What would happen if, for example, your child or a staff member or a parent or a family member of your child actually tested positive. So we'll go through those protocols. We actually had a lot of questions from you about returning to school and the learning options. So what are the options and how are those decisions made, and the actual the particulars that would be important for you to consider given your family circumstances. And then many questions around switching learning programs mid-year. So starting out in one and the possibility of switching mid-year. So those were the main themes. When we think about opening or reopening, there actually, as of last Friday, new guidelines came out, and I'm sure you are aware that the governor came out with an order. And per the order and per the California Department of Public Health, as of last Friday, schools and school districts may reopen for in-person instruction at any time if they are located in a local health jurisdiction, that's an LHJ, that has not been on the county monitoring list within the prior 14 days. Our LHJ is San Diego County. If the LHJ, which is San Diego County for us, has been on the monitoring list within the last 14 days, the school must conduct distance learning only until their LHJ has been off the monitoring list for at least 14 days. So that does include San Diego County. Our district is within that LHJ and falls under those parameters for those guidelines. So as we look, next slide, Chris. As we look at the facts and the data around our district, we think about how is that monitoring list, what are the triggers that get an LHJ on that monitoring list, and why is San Diego on that list? I will tell you that one of the triggers is a trigger that San Diego County meets, and you can see here the 4 triggers. The first one is the case rate. So if there is if the positivity rate for cases is 100 per 100,000 in the general population, that is one of the triggers. That is the one that San Diego County does meet. You can see here, as of 5 p.m. on Friday, we had 145 positive cases per 100,000 people. A second trigger would be the positivity rate. So of those tested, greater than 8% being positive would place the LHJ on the watch list. We do not have that in San Diego County right now. You can look down below. Our positivity rate as of 5 p.m. yesterday was 7 p.m. It's gone anywhere between 4, 5, 6%. It was 7%. It was 7% yesterday, excuse me. Another trigger is increasing hospitalization at a greater than 10% increase. So over that, I believe it's three-day period of time, having that hospitalization increase would put an LHJ on the watch list. Ours in San Diego County is an increasing rate as of 0.4%. The last one is number of ICU beds available, and less than 20% being available would put it on the watch list. In San Diego County, we have ICU beds available at 33%. So therefore, we have been working diligently on our safe reopening plan, and Jenny Hutt, our Director of Student Services, is going to talk more about that at this time.
Thank you, Holly. Welcome, everyone. So like Holly mentioned, our goal is really to be prepared for our students to return back to school safely, so that once we are permitted to resume in-person instruction, we will be ready to open our schools. One of the requirements of the health order is that we have a solid plan in place prior to our reopening. We began our initial planning process in the spring, and our initial district planning committee included representatives from each department, and really was looking at our needs across the district related to personal protective equipment, hand washing availability, supplies that we may need, and cleaning and disinfecting schedules. So now that we have updated guidance from the state regarding the reopening guidelines, we're able to move forward with our safe reopening planning at each school site. So going forward, the planning will really switch to a school level focus. There will be site committees formed at each site led by our principals and including all staff that are interested in participating. And we'll also include opportunities for parents to participate as well. So the purpose of the safe reopening plan is to address each of the guidelines established by the California Department of Public Health for safe reopening of schools, and how will we be implementing at each specific site, how will we be implementing and addressing these guidelines? So since the governor's announcement on Friday regarding schools reopening, the California Department of Public Health guidelines have also been updated. The district will follow all of the guidelines as part of our reopening plan. We will start with our health and hygiene practices, and we'll be providing instruction to our students and staff on proper hand washing protocols and providing increased opportunities for hand washing throughout the day. We will have teaching materials that we will be providing to parents as well, so that parents can support this learning of proper hygiene and health practices and really begin that understanding for our students at home. Another guideline is that we will be conducting symptom checks of any staff and students coming onto campus. We learned today that there was a change in this requirement. We've learned it just this morning, that temperature checks will no longer be required for students. So that was going to be a big part of our planning process, was how will we be scanning students as they come to school to conduct temperature checks. And we learned late this morning that temperature checks will not be required of students, but we will be conducting them with our staff. For students, we'll be conducting wellness checks each day, really just monitoring for any signs or symptoms of illness. Another guideline for reopening is that we will limit the sharing of supplies. So each student will have their own supplies that will be stored with them at their in their classroom, and there won't be a sharing of school supplies. We will be increasing our cleaning and disinfecting throughout the district. I know Chris is going to address this a little bit more in his slide. And then finally, in the new order from the governor, it is indicated that because school staff are essential workers, districts will conduct periodic surveillance testing of staff. So we are awaiting more guidance from the state regarding the specifics of this, but we will be collaborating with the local health agency to provide periodic testing of staff, which will really help to identify any staff member who may be asymptomatic, but could be a positive carrier of the virus. And so this is part of the state's tracing and tracking protocol. So we will be implementing that as well prior to reopening schools. Okay. We received quite a few questions about face coverings. And as I'm sure you know, the governor has provided updated guidance regarding face coverings at school. Prior to Friday, the state mandate was that anybody over the age of 2 would be required to wear a face covering. However, the initial guidance provided by the state indicated that students at school would not be required to wear masks, that it was encouraged. This past Friday, there was an update by the governor that basically stated that students between grades 3rd through 6th and all staff would be required to wear face coverings, and that students in grades kindergarten to 2nd grade, it was strongly encouraged. However, we have made the decision, because we are committed to all students returning to school safely, we will be requiring face coverings for all students in grades kindergarten through 6th. We know students will not always be able to maintain distancing, and so for that reason, we will be requiring all students to wear a face covering, really to ensure the highest level of safety. We have purchased supplies of face coverings and face shields for our staff, and we have masks for students as well. And so anyone who comes to campus without a face covering will be provided with one. Additionally, we're ordering plexiglass barriers, and we'll have them available for each classroom to facilitate small group instruction. If a teacher is in a situation of sitting with a small group, we will have those plexiglass barriers available for teachers. Those have already been installed throughout our district for our office staff and anybody who might be interfacing with the public. Okay. Physical distancing is another theme that we received quite a few questions about. Many of you have asked if we will distance 6 feet between students. And the requirement from the state is that distancing, the distance between staff desks and students is 6 feet. This is coming directly from the State Department of Public Health. And in a webinar recently with the state epidemiologist, Dr. Pon, she indicated that the risk of student-to-student transmission is low in young students. So there is no rigid 6 feet requirement for students at this time from the state guidelines. But that does not mean that we won't be following distancing guidelines. We will be following the guidelines for facilitating distancing between students and between staff. So we're going to be looking at each classroom and really determining how can we maximize our classroom spaces to allow our students to spread out and be distanced throughout the room. We're looking at outdoor spaces and how to utilize them for learning opportunities. Chris will be talking a little bit more in his slide about outdoor spaces, but we are ordering tents to increase options for outdoor learning for each of our classrooms. So students will be maintained in cohorts with minimal interaction with other cohorts. So we're really focusing on keeping students together with their classroom, with their teacher in a small cohort that does not interact with other cohorts. And this is really optimal for reducing the risk of transmission. So if there is a positive case, there will be a smaller group or a cohort that will need to isolate or quarantine. And that small group or cohort will that will reduce the risk of transmission to a larger group. So the cohorts will be kept together for recess and lunch as well. So there may be a need to stagger recess and lunch times and keep students in separate areas outside for recess and lunch. Finally, access to campus will be limited to essential staff and students only. Again, we know that the combination of distancing, face coverings, and frequent hand washing provides the safest environment for our students and staff, and that's what we're committed to providing. Next slide. Okay, we've had several questions also about kind of the what ifs of COVID. So what will the response be if there is a sick student or a sick staff member? So this is the mitigation protocol that has been provided by the California Department of Public Health. We will also be following this protocol. We will have a COVID response team that includes our school nurses who will act as liaisons with the county public health office. And this, like I said, this will be our response to any student or staff member who presents with signs or symptoms of illness throughout the day. So the first box, student or staff member demonstrates symptoms associated with COVID-19. There is a list of those symptoms. We will be providing those at each of our school sites. We can send those home for parents as well. And we want to be looking at if the student has a history of a chronic condition such as allergies or asthma, that the staff is aware of that, so that if a student comes to school with a cough or sneezing related to a chronic condition, that the health tech is able to access that information in the student's health card and respond appropriately. So if there is a positive sign of a symptom of COVID, a student or a staff member would be isolated and sent home. So we would then recommend that they contact their healthcare provider and have a test for coronavirus. If the test is negative, the student or staff member may return 3 days after the symptoms resolve and 10 days after the sign of the first symptom. And that would not result in any classroom closures. If a student or staff member had a close contact with a confirmed positive case, they would be asked to quarantine 14 days from the day of exposure. And testing would be recommended at that time as well. And then if there was a positive confirmed COVID-19 case, we would ask that the entire cohort be quarantined, and that would result in a closure of that classroom for the period of the quarantine. And Shelley is going to talk a little bit more in her slide about what happens as far as instruction is concerned if we are in the situation that we have to close a classroom, or if a student is isolating for a different reason. Okay, next slide. Okay, and finally, our response plan. This plan was also included in the recent order from the governor. There's been some question as to when our county comes off of the watch list, and we've been 14 days without an incident and we're able to return to school, what would happen if we went back on the watch list? And at this time, there is no mandate that a school would be asked to close or a district would be asked to close because a county goes back on the watch list. So the State Department of Public Health and the governor have agreed that they will not ask districts to open and close in alignment with the watch list. Once we're allowed to resume in-person instruction, we will be able to continue unless there is really an outbreak or a high percentage of positive cases. So that is the rationale as well for the surveillance testing, is that once we're able to resume in-person instruction by periodically assessing and conducting health evaluations of our staff members, that we'll be able to really isolate anybody who might be sick prior to them coming onto our campus, which should allow for us to maintain a healthy environment. So that's important to know, that we will not be asked to close and reopen based on the watch list. So the only reason that a school would be required to close after initially opening, like I said, would be based on a number of positive cases. And so a school may close when more than 5% of the total number of students and staff are positive for COVID-19. And as well as superintendent, in collaboration with the San Diego Department of Public Health, may close a district if 25% of the schools have been closed due to an outbreak. And again, the district will have a COVID response team, and we will be collaborating and consulting consistently with our local health officials. Okay. Chris, you're next.
And I was muted. I am no longer muted. Okay. Sorry about that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our school site preparation and the proactive steps we've taken with our maintenance operations facility staff to prepare for the summer and then for the school year and reopening. And we started this off with deep cleaning over the end of the school year. We included with that replacing all of the filters and coils, cleaning the coils in our HVAC systems. We've worked with a firm that works with some of the architects with whom we're working to design schools to look at allowing the maximum amount of outside air in, so that when we're cycling air through, we are getting the maximum amount of outdoor air and therefore able to cycle the air as often as possible. In addition, we're running the HVAC systems in the evenings and in the mornings so that that air is cycled and fresh air is in after people leave and before people show back up to school. And so by it starting very early, it will cycle after people leave, and then at least 6 times before people come back into classrooms in the morning, so that we have fresh air going through. And then it does replace every approximately 18 minutes. So we have a good cycling of clean air, fresh air coming in through our HVAC systems. Additionally, we've been working with our staff on cleaning. We have reached out. We're hiring an extra staff member for each school site. That staff member in our maintenance operations facilities department will be going through the site and cleaning high-touch areas, restrooms, doorknobs, light switches on a defined basis throughout the day. We also have our plant managers there during the day, so they will also be doing cleaning. And then we'll have our night staff that will be able to do the cleaning and sanitization of every room every day. This additional staff member will ensure that we are cleaning on a regular basis throughout the day, those high-touch areas, and be able to help with the initial sanitizing and cleaning at the end of the day as we prepare to clean and sanitize the classrooms every single day for the next day of school. Hand cleaning obviously is very important, as Jenny spoke to. We have begun installing outdoor sinks at every one of our school sites. These outdoor sinks will provide more ability to distance, the ability to wash hands outside, the ability for students to wash hands even without going into the restroom, and even if they aren't going to the restrooms. They'll be near restroom areas, near our lunch areas where we have our plumbing and our ability to put them in. And we are also installing hand sanitizer at every one of our school sites. And so these are the wall-mounted hand sanitizers in passing areas, in moving into and out of buildings. And so we've installed at the minimum 20 in each school site, and we'll be having hand sanitizer in every single classroom on top of those installed hand sanitizers to ensure opportunities for our students and staff to be able to accommodate themselves with hand sanitizer anytime they are moving between different classrooms and different rooms in our schools. As Jenny mentioned, we are also looking at outdoor learning. And so we have toured sites, we've looked at a number of options, and we were working with our business services department today to finalize orders. We'll have tents coming so that every classroom will have a combination of a couple of tents that will be able to be placed on our fields, use some field space for outdoor learning to be able to spread out and have some of that space. In addition, we are already have been moving lunch tables to areas outside classrooms. We took the opportunity and proactively ordered umbrellas for lunch tables that did not have them so that we can expand and use the adjacencies to classrooms. And therefore, when teachers are using their classrooms, they will be able to use the classroom space and expand to the outdoor learning space so that students can spread out further, distance further, and accommodate themselves of the great weather we have and the ability to use outdoor learning areas. And then finally, every classroom will have ample supply of wipes. While we are adding staff, and we know that we will be wiping down those high-touch areas and sanitizing every single day, we will be giving our staff the ability to wipe down areas in their classroom anytime they need, and having that ability to have those wipes there so that we can have ongoing sanitization in the classroom anytime it's needed. With that, I will hand it on over to Shelley.
All right, thank you, Chris. So as we began preparing for our return to school, we really examined what options were out there and being talked about and available. And we received several questions about why not a hybrid model? Why aren't we doing some sort of split schedule? Well, the governor was very clear that he is requiring 180 days of school for every child, and that there is no waiver for instructional minutes. So unlike last year when we went into emergency distance learning or emergency remote classrooms, the governor did waive all instructional minutes and the requirement for instructional days for the 1920 school year. That's not the case as we move into the 2020-2021 school year. And there is a requirement that we provide in-person instruction to the greatest extent possible. And that, as Dr. McClurg talked about, is what we are setting out to do. And a hybrid model really amounts to less school for students. If students are only in school 50% of the time, they are getting 50% of the live instruction that they would be getting if they are back in school for 5 days a week. We have a concern about student supervision when they're not in school. So if they're not attending school regularly 5 days a week, where are those students? Are they in childcare settings? Actually, thereby increasing their exposure rather than being with their same cohort of students. And in DMUSD, we're very fortunate for years and years. Small class sizes have been a priority for our community, and we have really taken great efforts to maintain those. And we will likewise maintain very small class sizes in the upcoming school year. And Jason is going to talk about staffing and how for the 2021 school year, we can actually expect smaller class sizes than we would see in a typical school year. in districts where they are moving to a hybrid model of learning, they actually may be doing so because they have much larger class sizes of 30 to 40 students. We often see that in a high school setting, and that would necessitate them to use a hybrid model because they really can't reduce down to an appropriate size to provide adequate distancing between students. Next slide, please, Chris. So one of the two options we have landed on is the in-person learning, and something that we have been talking about as our priority. To provide in-person learning, we really are looking to those overarching health and safety guidelines according to HHSA, and how we can bring staff and students back safely to that in-person at school learning experience. So we are planning for 5 days each week with small student cohorts for that in-person experience. And if we have to provide remote learning due to a classroom being closed or a school being closed, then we will provide that remote learning. That does not mean that students will move into distance learning and the lunch program. It means that we will provide remote classrooms, remote teaching for our students, and that teaching would actually be conducted by that student's classroom teacher. And so in order to make sure our teachers are prepared, we have provided professional learning and an opportunity for students, for teachers to participate in leading edge certification. That is a certification that focuses on a blended learning model or a distance learning model. And that is taking place already. We have several teachers who have already finished that certification as we move into the new year. We are also piloting a science program this year, and that science program is much more conducive to a distance format. And so our teachers will be receiving training in that after a brief pilot period at the beginning of the year. We are also making available the iReady curriculum, and iReady is iReady Math and iReady Reading, and that has not only an assessment sequence so that we can monitor student progress, but it also has adaptive programs available to meet students where they are academically and support their learning for as long as would be necessary. All of those programs will be used in conjunction with the curriculum that we already have in place, like our Wonders language arts curriculum and our cognitively guided instruction in conjunction with investigation. So really working to make as many resources conducive to a remote situation available to all teachers as possible. We are also ensuring that we have adequate technology available to students. So we are ensuring that we have one-to-one iPads available for our students in kindergarten and first grade, as well as ensuring that all of our Chromebooks are available to all students in second through sixth grade. And we have heard loud and clear from our parents that when we were in the spring emergency school closure, that the platforms were very difficult to navigate. Parents had to toggle between Seesaw and PowerSchool and sometimes Google Classroom, and all three of those at play at the same time. So in a remote situation, we will be using Google Classroom. It provides a more seamless opportunity for students to turn in work, teachers to give feedback, and really house everything that would be necessary for teachers and students to be successful if we have to move to a remote classroom setting. And we did receive many questions about students who have IEPs and what does STEAM Plus look like. All students who are on IEPs will receive services in the in-person learning at school model, and students will also have the the opportunity to participate in our STEAM Plus program. We are still working out what that looks like for students, again, because we are constantly paying attention to those health and safety guidelines, wanting to minimize exposure for staff and students. So we will provide all of those the STEAM Plus experience and students who are on IEPs. We will provide all of that to students in conjunction with the health and safety guidelines. Next slide, please, Chris. We also have our Launch Distance Learning Program available. It's important to note that this is a district-wide program. So when parents will confirm registration and opt into the Launch Distance Learning Program, it will be district-wide. So it will draw from students at all 8 of our school sites. There were some questions from parents around why couldn't we have launch teachers at each school site? Well, because as parents launch in or opt into launch, we don't have enough children at each particular school site at each of our 7 grade levels to create a full class. Having a launch teacher at each school site could end up being several multi-age classes in the distance learning program. And so we will draw from all of the students district-wide so that we create grade level classes within our distance learning program. All students will be assigned to a classroom, if you will, a virtual classroom, and they will have a DMUSD certificated teacher. We are not contracting our distance learning program out. We are working on training our teachers. We already have that staff selected. We had several teachers from our teaching staff who were interested in being distance learning teachers. So we have begun meeting with them and providing all of the framework and structure so that they can be trained and prepared to move into distance learning this fall. We will staff according to the number of parents who opt into distance learning. So we don't have a cap. If we have more than 400 students, we will increase staffing in launch to ensure that all students and parents who opt into that program will have the opportunity to participate. And again, students with IEPs will continue to receive services according to their IEPs within the launch program. STEAM Plus will be available. We will have art available that will take place virtually. And as soon as we are able, we will provide physical education for our students in the launch program. And our hope is that we can provide the PE program in person. PE classes are conducted outdoors. It will give children an opportunity to interact with their classroom of students, meet one another, and it will really foster that sense of community as part of the launch program. Our launch teachers will be using iReady reading and iReady math, as well as all of our launch teachers are participating in the Amplify science pilot. So that is new curriculum and curriculum we're bringing on board. There were some questions about assessment and what does that look like. Some of the interim assessments for students in the launch program, those will be able to occur at home. All of our state testing, it will be required that occur in person, and as well as some of that benchmark testing that teachers will want to do with students to ensure that we can accurately assess where they are on that learning continuum so that we can provide the right materials, the right instructional program to move those students forward. And if parents or students are unable to come in person for some of those interim assessments that are provided by our district staff and for our internal purposes, then we will do whatever we can to provide those remotely, those assessments remotely. Within the launch program, there will be live instruction every day throughout the day. And so if we think about, well, what does that look like and how much instruction will be provided? If you think kindergarten through second grade, we think about productive learning time, and we can ballpark about 4 hours within the 8 to 2:30 school day, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday. We will adjust those hours for the Wednesday minimum days because our launch calendar will follow the regular school calendar and the school timeframes. Now, when I say, and then for third through sixth grade, it will be 5 hours of productive learning time. So that you can ballpark that as you think about that. That does not mean that a child is going to be sitting in front of a computer getting live instruction for 4 hours or for 5 hours. What that means is that you will be provided with a schedule, and there will be set blocks of time where live instruction will occur. For example, you could be assured that your child would get live reading instruction, say from 8 to 9. I'm making that time up, could be 8:30 to 9:30. Classroom schedules will vary according to the class and the grade and the age of student and what is developmentally appropriate. But that schedule will be consistent throughout the week so that parents can really count on that live instructional time. So after that hour of instruction, there would be a break, and there may be some independent learning time where students can actually then take what they just learned and apply it with an independent learning task or through the support of someone, the learning coach, who would be at home with the student. And while that's happening, a teacher might be pulling a small group of students to work on a small group guided reading instruction. After we move through that period of instruction, it might be time for mathematics. So there could potentially be a 45-minute mathematics period of live instruction, followed by some independent application of the learning, and then again another live instructional period toward the end of the day that could include science or social studies instruction or integrated into some writing. So that just gives you an idea of what it could potentially look like. We will be able to provide some schedules that can give you an idea of where those blocks of time may fall. But again, as teachers develop those schedules for individual grade levels, there will be some variations with that. But rest assured, students will have a very nice combination of live instruction, asynchronous instruction where it may be recorded, and independent learning time varied throughout the day, each and every day. And then in order to prepare our teachers for the launch program and what that distance learning program will look like, those teachers are already working on their leading edge certification. They are going to be receiving the training in the Amplify Science program, iReady Math, iReady Reading, and the Google Classroom platform. And similar to how I described us using that learning management system, the same will apply here in Launch. Teachers will also have a Google site, and that Google site will act as that teacher web page where all of the information that parents might need or students might need is all housed in that one place. The oversight of the launch program, it's important for parents to know that it is not a typical school. It's not a school within a district, but rather a program within our district, which will be overseen by our district office. There will be a point of contact within instructional services that will serve as the person who is working directly with teachers and parents and providing parent university information, so parents are really aware of what programs and resources and events are going to take place to make sure they are very well equipped to support their students should they choose the distance learning model. Next slide, please, Chris. And then, so what if schools and classrooms close? I spoke to this briefly, but we do have a committee, and it has a really fancy name. It's the Committee in the Event of School Closure Committee. And that committee will be focusing specifically on what we need to do to ensure that in the event a classroom or a school has to close, or the district, that we are able to seamlessly move into that remote classroom environment, and parents know what to expect, teachers know what to expect, and we have the resources at the ready in the event that should happen. The instructional day in the event of school closure will be similar to launch. So just like our launch program, our distance learning program will provide a regular schedule with regular periods of live instruction, that same thing will occur if we have to move to a remote classroom model. We will utilize all of those materials that I explained in the in-person classroom and what teachers are getting trained on. iReady Math, iReady Reading, Amplify, and the Google Classroom as the learning management system, along with access to a Google site. And then what happens if it's one or two students in a classroom that needs to isolate or just get sick and shouldn't come to school because they have a cold? In that case, what will happen is the student will be provided with independent study, and that is teacher designed. We already have an independent study option for parents whose students are going to be out for 5 or more days. And so we'll use that as our baseline, and then teachers will be able to build on that independent study contract so that they can provide students with resources to really stay abreast of the learning that's occurring in the classroom in the event that they should have to miss school. You can't replace in-person instruction. You can't replace what happens in those daily interactions, but we will have the opportunity to provide those resources for students in the event they are unable to attend in person. And with that, I will hand it on over to Jason.
Thank you, Shelley, and good evening, families. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the attendance in our programs and some of our staffing and what that looks like. When Shelley talked about the difference between the two programs, the launch distance learning program versus the in-person at school program. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the staff and how those programs are made. Both staffs in the launch program or in-person are fully credentialed teachers, and the launch program will mirror what we're going to see in person. You're going to have, newer teachers and more experienced veteran teachers making up both programs. Some of the questions that we received were, what if I change my mind? What if I change my mind? If I sign up for the launch program and then, 2 to 3 months later, I decide I want to, change and have my children attend the in-person program. So those are going to be available on a case-by-case basis, and there's no guarantee that if you choose the launch program, you'll have the same school that you left to return to. So if you were Ashley Falls, 3rd grade, and this year in the 2021 school year, you were going to be in 4th grade. If you decide mid-year you want to return back to school, if there's space available, absolutely, you will be able to have your child return. If not, there will be options to return at other school sites. You won't have the same teacher that you had during the launch, and there's no guarantee that we can have a teacher, your choice teacher. But as spots are available, they will be you will be eligible to return your child to in-school teaching. The question really relates to the next school year. All guarantees for the 21-22 school year, so not this coming school year, but the following school year, your child will have rights to return to their school of attendance. So if you were at Ashley Falls and that's your school of attendance, in the following school year, if you choose the launch program, you will have that guaranteed spot available for you at the school of your attendance. Next slide, Chris. So with staffing, one of the things that we're really being very intentional about is ensuring that we have smaller class sizes across the district. So to achieve that, it really means bringing in additional teachers. So this year, district-wide, we had an enrollment of 4,100 students. Next year, our projection is for the district to be 3,900 students. So we are in our fourth year in declining enrollment in Del Mar. But what we're really doing is prioritizing smaller class sizes, as you can see in the first bullet points, by bringing in additional teachers. So this current school year that just ended, we had 4,100 students, 179 teachers. Next year, we're going to have less students, 3,900, and 191 teachers. So 12 additional teachers on our staff, so basically 7% more, and we're at the same time reducing by 6% of our population. So what that's going to do is really create smaller class sizes district-wide for our in-person learning experience. So our in-person classes, the K-3 average will be about 17 to 19, and that's our current numbers. As more families or different things happen, we are going to be looking at possibly even lower class sizes than that. Our 4 through 6 average of 18 to 20, most of our classes are going to be hovering around the 15 to 17 students. And in doing so, our distance learning classes will look very similar to the class sizes that we have this year in our school district. Those class sizes in our distance learning will be closer to the mid to high 20s for our distance learning families. So in doing so, that allows us to maximize the use of all of our space. So Chris talked about the ability that the district has to provide opportunities for learning outdoors. So whether we're maximizing our outdoor space on the fields or the adjacencies to our classroom with tents, all of that is designed to ensure that we have the social distancing and social spacing needed to provide safety for everyone. And in doing so, that safety is going to be talked about when we provide training to our staff. How to use the PPE, how to control the environment. Chris talked about the additional staff that we're actually hiring. Every single school site is being provided additional custodial support in the hiring of full-time employees at every single school site to ensure the safety of those environments, to hit down those high-touch areas, wipe down all of the things, disinfect restrooms multiple times during the day to ensure that our environments are the safest they can be. Our substitutes are also getting rigorous training, not just in the safety protocols, but for our launch program, how to access and how to use our technology and our programs and all the things that we're going to be using in our launch program. We're going to have our subs trained in those same programs and those same trainings alongside our teachers to ensure that they're able to provide continuity as it relates to distance learning schedules. The idea behind that, and the idea behind ensuring that we don't have a lot of movement back and forth between our programs, is to ensure that our students and our staff really have continuity in learning. And so we have the same substitutes that are working in distance learning, providing that substitute work. There's continuity in what happens in the classrooms. And just like being able to address the issues of staff, parents wanting to return back to the school site, we're being really careful in ensuring that we have low class sizes, but a lot of that also has to do with ensuring the continuity of what happens in the classroom and maintaining the instructional integrity. Thank you. And now it's back to Holly.
So what happens next? School districts throughout this country and our state are working very hard to address all of the questions that we've been talking with you about tonight, and with all of the changing information that we're faced with daily. And in fact, we received some information just today that we were able to share with you this evening. So you can see that it is a dynamic, changing environment, and we continue to remain focused on providing those options for you as families and as parents to be able to select for your child what's best for your child, for your family, for the upcoming school year. We're committed to quality in both, and we're very committed to making sure that we are ready to open our schools and welcome our children back as soon as we can, and do it in a way that keeps our children safe and our staff safe. We can hardly wait for them to be back, and I have thoughts of the joy that children will experience when they actually get to return to a school campus and feel what it feels like to be a child in a student at their school again. And it's very exciting to think about, and a lot of good work is happening in order that we're able to do that. So as I talked about earlier, we continue to make decisions based on those guidelines and directives from the Health and Human Services Agency and the California Department of Public Health. We will continue to do that. We are going to have another webinar this Thursday. So after this webinar, we're actually going to have the chat open for 15 minutes. So we encourage you to submit any questions that you have now after hearing what we've talked about. As I said, we got a lot of questions. Hopefully we were able to answer a lot of them, if not most of them this evening. And I encourage you to reach out with your questions. Another thing that will happen very soon is related to what Jason Romero was just talking about regarding enrollment for next year. So the enrollment window again will open on July 29th and will close on August 3rd for all of you as parents to be able to enroll now and confirm that enrollment for the 2020-2021 school year. Hopefully you can see some of the decisions we have to make that are dependent on what you decide for your children. So we need to be able to make sure that we have the right teachers in the right place and the right training and all of those pieces. So that's important, and we did let you know that you would be able to revisit that and change your mind from what you talked to us about earlier in the earlier surveys and enrollment periods. So thank you in advance for doing that. We will be sending out an email on the 29th, so you can select either launch or in person for your children. And again, we are committed to making sure that we're prepared for both of these options. And right now, a lot of focus on in-person instruction and making sure that we have everything ready to go so that we can welcome our children and our staff back safely. So again, we appreciate your involvement. We appreciate all of the contacts that you have made with us already. It's helping us come to some good decisions for all of you and ultimately for our children. Please know how much we miss you and your families, and to any new families out there that are getting ready to join our district for the next school year, we're going to be excited to welcome you. You're in a wonderful place. I feel very fortunate to work with the most talented and dedicated people among our leadership team, our teaching staff, our support staff, and a really involved and wonderful parent community. We're very grateful for all of you. We miss your children. We can't wait to see you. We will continue to work hard to be ready to see them in the fall. Thank you. Have a good evening. We'll leave the chat open for 15 minutes, and we'll see you back here Thursday. It will be a different webinar, part 2. Thank you and good night.